Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Skidmore, and I am the director of the NCRCRD. Some of you know that Scott Loveridge, who had been the director of the center for the last 5 or 6 years, stepped down at the beginning of the year. So I'm sort of the new guy, and glad to be here, and glad to be hosting this webinar with Robert Hearn and Felix Fernando. The title of their webinar is Community Strategies for Water Supply in the Bakken Region. Before I go any further, are you all okay? Can you hear me all right? You can write a little note in the chat section if it doesn't sound okay. Okay, I see some saying we can hear you, so that's good. Okay, so Dr. Hearn is an associate professor at the Department of Agribusiness and Applied Economics at North Dakota, and Felix Fernando is completing his PhD in natural resource management with a focus on sociology and economics from NDSU. He's currently at a postdoc position at the University of Dayton. What I'll do is I'll kind of step out of the way. I might interject every once in a while if there's somebody, a participant who's writing a question in the chat section, and then Robert and Felix will kind of be following that as well. So feel free to ask questions along the way or at the end, and we'll have an opportunity to have good interaction and good information. So I'll stop there, and Robert and Felix, it's all yours.
Okay, I'll start us off. This is Bob Hearn. Please feel free to break in and ask questions during the presentation. I don't mind being slowed down at all. So this is an outline. It's not really a traditional research seminar presentation. I'm just going to talk about the challenges that we have faced in the Bakken region over water management, both for industry and the communities. I'll give a little background on the water situation as it has been in the Bakken, and then some of the current things that we are doing to address some of these challenges. And then we'll talk about longer term issues, certainly dealing with what might be considered to be an academic solution, which would be reallocation of water. And then our conclusions will talk about North Dakota strategies. And frankly, I'm having a little problem with this pointer, so we'll see what's going on here. So here, okay. This is the Bakken region. Actually, the Bakken goes up into Manitoba and over into Montana. And right in this is the dark green area are well locations, and this is the core area of the Bakken. And note that the core area of the Bakken is bisected by the Missouri River and Lake Sakakawea. Note that this also is that North Dakota is actually, or western North Dakota is actually semi-arid, relatively dry, and we would expect that water would be an issue in relatively dry areas. I've ordered, this is all the oil producing counties in western North Dakota with at least 1,000 barrels as of November 14. Our information goes through 2014. Our annual information on 2015 was not available from the same databases as of last week. So we'll stick with right now with 2014 information on production. But please note that, okay, Ward County is a traditional energy center with coal production and electricity generation. It also is the home of Minot Air Force Base. Williams County here is the home of one of the big hub cities in the area, Williston. Stark is the home of another large hub city, Dickinson. And the core counties in terms of oil production are Williams County, Mountrail County, McKenzie County, and Dunn County. Also, please note that the area is sparsely populated, and also that although there is lots of agriculture, there's very little irrigation despite the relatively dry climate. Okay, so here is our up to 2014 information. Please note that wells started picking up in 2008, 2009, 2010 was when the real boom period began and oil production began. And note that the prices started to dip in 2014. And of course, I guess the latest information now in January 2016 is prices are hovering somewhere around under $30 a barrel. That's the Dakota Sweet crude. Okay, so our challenges. One is industrial water demand. Wells are dug, and in order to break up the shale oil, they are fracked. So a mixture of water, salt, and other chemicals are pumped down into wells under pressure to break open the shale and to leave fissures in the shale so that oil can be extracted. Uh, 11 acre feet of water are on average used for fracking a well. This is a highly variable number, but this number comes as an average of a large number of wells being fracked in western North Dakota. Throughout production or whatever, close to 23 million or 23 acre feet of water, which equivalates to something over 28,000 cubic meters of water are used for each well. Most of this water is trucked to the wells, and the water, once it's brought into the oil production and fracking system, is taken out of the hydrological cycle. The quality degrades so much that it is not returned to surface water. It is highly difficult and expensive to recycle. Therefore, it is pumped back into what the state calls deep saltwater wells. Some of these are abandoned oil wells and left there out of the hydrological cycle. The state and oil industry suggests that there is no chance of a mixture between the fracking water and groundwater sources, but we have had recorded spills of wastewater and fracking water. Our challenges are also growing human population. Some of this growing human population is in the hub cities, which would be Williston, Minot, Dickinson, and Watford City, each in the core counties. And there are, in addition, rural towns, smaller communities, and homesteads. The challenge is to bring high quality water for households and for the industries that we expect to service the oil industry and the agricultural industry. So western North Dakota, traditionally it's an agricultural area. However, there's very little irrigation. Most of the irrigation comes from groundwater sources. There is a lot of cattle, but 84% of agricultural income comes from crop production. Very limited aquifers for groundwater, and this is generally poor water quality in the aquifers. So what are the sources of water that we have available in the region? There is, throughout the area, some small aquifers. The Mouse River is what the international community calls the Souris River. But in North Dakota, we like to call it the Mouse River. Flows from Canada down toward Minot and back up, back into Canada and out into the Hudson Bay Basin. And then there is the Missouri River. Please note the Missouri River flows, and it's still a river when it gets to the city of Williston, but shortly after Williston, is where Lake Sakakawea begins. This is a federally managed dam. Down here below the city of Bismarck, Lake Oahe begins, which is another U.S. Army Corps of Engineer managed reservoir. North Dakota is a prior appropriation state, which means that water permits and water rights are given to owners for beneficial uses of water. Beneficial uses of water are community water supply, irrigation, and etc. Because the land in North Dakota has not been suitable for large surface irrigation systems, and because there's low population density and little industry, North Dakota has not allocated a lot of Missouri River water. This water is allocated by the State Water Commission under North Dakota water law. In order to help the oil industry, the State Water Commission has granted temporary permits to utilize very small surface water systems that have surface water sources have developed in a wet cycle, have allowed temporary sales of irrigation water from to water depots where trucks can pick them up for industry needs from fracking. And the State Water Commission has allowed certain municipalities, such as Williston and Dickinson, to sell water, residential water, to the oil industry for fracking through water depots. Now, a lot of water flows through North Dakota and the Missouri River, and this is an average of close to 18 million acre feet flows before the river hits Lake Sakakawea. Only 570,000 acre feet have been permitted for use in North Dakota, and much of this is for non-consumptive power generation where water is drawn from the river to cool electric generation and then returned to the river later without a consumptive use. So North Dakota has consistently maintained that the best source of water for the whole region is the Missouri River. But much of the Missouri River is managed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They have become de facto river masters through their management of the series of 6 what we call Pick-Sloan dams built from the years 1930s through 1960s. These provide traditional services, flood control, navigation, some irrigation, municipal industrial water use, hydroelectric generation, and frankly, big in the Dakotas, recreation. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has its master manual, designates certain water for certain purposes, and the back and forth between the states, the upper states and the lower states, the states and the Army Corps of Engineers about water use has led to numerous court cases, continuous disputes, and the dispute that basically most is interesting to us is that with the advent of the oil industry in the Bakken, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers proposed to sell Lake Sakakawea to the oil industry. However, the state of North Dakota is the constitutional authority to allocate water in North Dakota. Therefore, since it has the permitting power, it has thought that it should be the rightful supplier of this water and not the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers does not have the right to deny users water, but they have the right to deny users access to the water at Lake Sakakawea and Lake Oahe. These are the 2 reservoirs. So they can basically prohibit users from extracting water along the right-of-way that surrounds these two large water bodies. Therefore, this imposes what I consider a tax, or it's extra transportation, extra pipeline costs on water systems to deliver water around the right of way and around the lake. Okay, I am going to let Felix go ahead and talk a little more about the regional water systems.
I've talked about how the industrial demand and the residential demand has increased with oil development. Now, I'm going to talk about what are the solutions or the projects that are in place to address these demands. Now, there's also basically there's three projects in place. The three are the Western Area Water Supply Project, usually referred as the WAS project, the Northwest Area Water Supply Project, usually referred to as the NORS project, and the Southwest Area Pipeline Project, called the SWPP. Now, these skeletons of these three systems have been there before oil development. What has happened with the oil development is they have upgraded and expanded these systems with new water treatment plants, new pipeline upgrades and transmission lines, and trying to switch from groundwater aquifers to high quality Missouri water. Now, the funding for these three projects have come from multiple sources. One's from federal funding from the 2000 Dakota Water Resources Act, and now Dakota's Resources Trust Fund, which is basically through 20% of oil extraction taxes, then sale of water to the oil industry and sales to rural water districts and municipal systems. Now, what has happened with the demand from the oil industry is that it has given these water systems an opportunity to generate additional revenue in addition to what they could have generated by selling water to rural customers. Now, as Bob noticed, there is low population density in most of these areas. So if oil hadn't come through, covering some of the project costs, especially in the WAS, the Western Area Water Supply Project, would have been difficult. But with the expansion of the oil industry, it has given these projects an opportunity to generate some additional revenue by selling water to the industry demands and needs. Now, there's also a few tribal water systems in the area, which we haven't discussed in this research paper, but they are mostly funded through the Dakota Water Resources Act. Now, I will go into in detail about each of the system. First, to start off with the Southwest Pipeline Project. It's a state-owned and administered by State Water Commission pipeline, and it's managed by the Southwest Water Authority, and it serves more than 56,000 residents in about 31 communities. You can see the area covered by the pipeline on the map. Let me try to see whether I can show you. So this is the intake, and then the water. So what happens is the water, the pipeline draws raw water from Lake Sakakawea, and it brings through a pipeline to Dickinson, where it is treated, and then it's delivered to customers in southwest North Dakota and also Perkins County in South Dakota. Now, it has been selling limited. I mean, comparatively, if you compare between the three systems, Southwest Water Pipeline has been selling limited quantities of water to the industry to cover certain expansions in their transmission system. Now, moving on to the NORS project, the Northwest Area Water Supply Project. This is a federally funded project, and it serves a 10-county region north of the Missouri River that also falls into the Moose River Basin, now which is part of course, the Hudson Bay drainage area eventually. And as a result, the NORS project has faced so many legal issues and lawsuits by Missouri and Manitoba against interbasin transfer. Now, pipelines have been built, And as it's being funded by the federal uh, money, they were required to undertake a environmental impact assessment, and the final supplemental environmental impact assessment was released in April 2015 with record of decision in August 2015. Now, the preferred or the selected alternative involved using Lake Sakakawea water as the primary water supply, and the Burex Snake Creek pumping plant on Highway 83, which exists before oil development, will serve as the intake, and the water will be conveyed to a biota water treatment plant in Max, North Dakota. And from there, the water will be conveyed through another pipeline to Minot Water Treatment Plant, where it will be blended with groundwater and treated and delivered to customers. Now, so this is right now in the initial phase of the project. Now, the biggest project that caters to most of the oil patch in North Dakota is the Western Area Water Supply Project. This was authorized by the legislature in 2011 and is supported by the state with grants and loans, and there is no use of federal funding. Now, what the project did was basically take over certain small water supply systems that was there in communities, and then sort of build a connecting network of systems. Like, say for example, it took over the operation and management of the the water treatment plant in Williston, and also the transmission infrastructure from Williston to Watford City. So as a result, some of the smaller fragmented systems that were there before now have been integrated under the umbrella of the WAS. Now, the WAS withdraws water and treats water at the Missouri River at the Williston Water Treatment Plant before it enters the lake, and also it uses a combination of groundwater treated by the water treatment plant in Ray. Now, without federal funds, the WAS project has been able to proceed quickly and without any issues or legal issues or lawsuits, as in the case of the NORS project. Now, talking about WAS was basically being designed or being constructed right now to exceed the capacity of the needs of the current residential population. And initial estimates was that they would cover about 80% of the project cost through selling water to the industry. But, through later forecasts, and because of changes, now the most of the bigger portion of that cost is to be taken up by residential customers, um, or through sales to rural communities. Now, with these three projects in place, the next important question becomes what's going to happen with the reduction, with the reduction of oil prices. But first, let me talk about some of the challenges that these three systems have faced. Now, like I said before, because of the low population density and long distances, the uh, the transmission costs, or building up costs of pipelines and transmission infrastructure uh, becomes an issue, as well as, like Bob mentioned, distance increase because of block right of way by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to Lake Sakakawea. Um, Also, when the oil activity was high, most of these pipe construction contractors faced issues of road congestion, inability to attract construction workers and contractors, as well as equipment shortages. Now, it must be noted that within the last few years, a lot of pipeline infrastructure has built across western North Dakota for transportation of oil, transportation of gas, transportation of basic services. So as a result, there's a lot of landowner fatigue whenever there's another pipeline that's going through their property. And so as a result, some of the pipelines have faced issues getting right of ways. Now, one of the reasons that contributes to that is if there's an oil pipeline that goes through a property, then they will pay for right of way. but the water projects aren't in a position to pay for right-of-way, and as a result, without any financial incentive, it seems that some residents are reluctant to provide the right-of-way. And also, because of contractor busyness, or some contractors are taking easy way outs, there is not a very good reputation among the residents for most of the contractors who do soil reclamation or land reclamation in the area. So the oil, so that, especially when it comes to dealing with the oil pipelines, but most of the water projects like the WAS have taken measures to ensure that by having their own teams, just in case if the contractors don't do the work, then they will go in and do the land reclamation and charge the contractor. Now, this being challenges, how does the situation change with the drop in oil prices? Now, definitely, the drop in oil prices in 2015 has decreased the pace of drilling, but it has not stopped drilling. Now, for example, the Bakken formation is the shape of a cup. Therefore, the resource is thickest in the four core counties, which is Dunn, McKenzie, Montreal, and Williams, where 80 to 90% of the oil comes from. And the break-even price of a barrel is from $30 to $40 in these um, four counties, and with more infrastructure being built, that break-even price might come down further. So as a result, even with the low prices, it is still profitable to drill in these four core counties. And what has happened with the decline in the prices is that most of the activity has become concentrated around these four counties. Now, what you could expect is that as and when the prices go through a cycle of ups and downs, the oil drilling may expand to areas where it is profitable and may retract from areas where it is not profitable. So, in North Dakota, we might experience like repeated waves of mini booms and mini busts over the course of decades, depending on how long the prices keep on moving up and down in a cyclical fashion. Now, but the opportunity that the price reduction brings is that it gives an opportunity for the communities as well as for the water projects to catch up and build infrastructure. Like I said, with the decrease in oil prices, more contractors are bidding for water projects and infrastructure projects, and the laborers are easily accessible compared to when the activity was high. So it will provide an opportunity for these water projects to build infrastructure pipeline at a lesser cost, and then also build up the infrastructure so that when the prices if and when the prices do increase, that they are better suited to serve the needs of the communities in Western North Dakota. Now, that being the long-term perspective, I'll hand over to Bob to talk about the water reallocation scenarios.
Okay, thanks, Felix. I'm an economist, and I started looking at this issue back in 2013, 2014, with the idea that perhaps what would be needed would be water reallocation. Sometimes, perhaps, water reallocation from irrigation and agricultural uses to industrial uses. And frankly, North Dakota has a part of its water law suggests that this allocation is not is prohibited. Reallocating water from what North Dakotans consider a higher important use, which is irrigation and livestock, to a lower important use, which is industry, under current Century Code rules is not allowed, although it has been allowed temporarily. So water reallocation would mean that water would be shifted from certain uses toward other uses. Um, and we looked at this basically with more information about Missouri River water. And um, what we would need is some type of assessment of what water is physically available and legally available for use and the economic value of this water. Um, but looking at this, there is plenty of water available to the state of North Dakota to permit for use in North Dakota. The flows into the Missouri River at Williston are large, and very little of that water is currently permitted for use in North Dakota. So North Dakota has the water and has the legal right to allocate the water. What it does not have is the legal right to extract it from alternative points in Lake Sakakawea. Um, the water that is used for industry and community development in North Dakota has an opportunity cost. Much of that water is the priority for its use is to maintain navigation in the lower Missouri River. However, there's very little navigation in the lower Missouri River. The days when you had large amounts of barges transporting agricultural goods from from Nebraska and Iowa down into Missouri are basically gone. Most of the navigation in the lower Missouri River is to transport building materials, um, a lot of sand and silt, a couple of miles in Missouri. So that, frankly, the value of any water used in North Dakota is negligible, very close to zero in the lower Missouri. So that economically transferring or using what the Missouri River water is a good thing for North Dakota to do. It is physically there, it's legally available, so that water reallocation is not necessary and not needed. Okay, so our conclusions. And our conclusions follow what we call North Dakota strategies. Even with a slowdown in oil prices, or a lowering of oil prices, a slowdown in pumping and drilling, North Dakota has a considerable incentive to facilitate oil production and expansion in the Bakken region. Uh, in order to facilitate the growth of the region, you need to support water supply systems. This is for communities and for rural areas, and to transfer from relatively low quality groundwater to a relatively high quality Missouri River water. North Dakota was very prescient, had a very good idea when it created the Resources Trust Fund in the 1990s to siphon off money from oil drilling toward water needs in the state. And actually, the use of water sales or sales of water to the water industry should be considered a fortunate way to kind of speed up the development of these water systems. And the use of Missouri River water is highly beneficial as compared to other water sources. North Dakota needs to bring water from the Missouri River up into the less secure and drier areas of the Souris and Mouse River Basin. The latest we've heard from the NAWS project is that there's a record of decision by the Bureau of Reclamation to go ahead and complete the WAS project. There is always some skepticism that there will be another court case brought on by Manitoba and Missouri in order to stop this. In order to go ahead, we have to make efforts to minimize any risk of invasive species transfer from the Missouri River Basin to the Hudson Bay Basin. This should be done in both the NAWS project and the WAS project, because currently the WAS project is taking Missouri River water and bringing it up into the Mouse River Basin. This area has relied upon groundwater for groundwater in these areas for decades. It is now time to shift away using the oil boom of financing possibilities in order to improve the whole water supply for the region is a good thing. The WAS project is being constructed to exceed current residential capacity. Therefore, it has excess capacity to sell to the oil industry. It should be doing this. Um, okay. Let's see if I forgot anything here because I'm no. Okay. Please go ahead, and if you have any questions, I'll put up our contact information also. Um, I haven't heard anyone else speak, but now I'm hoping that people will pipe in. You want to go ahead, Mark?
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a question. Oh, David K is typing something now. I guess a question that I have is as you concluded, it sounds like both of you believe that the amount of water use and anticipated water use is sort of sustainable in that region, and it's not going to be too much of a burden given the expansion of oil production, et cetera. Would you say that that's your assessment?
Yes, that is. Yes, that is my assessment. I also have the feeling that the system expansion should continue as the boom abates. As the boom abates, there will be less money in the Resources Trust Fund, although there has been savings in that trust fund. But costs should go down because there'll be other construction capacity available. Um, Crews will be available to do work that they haven't done before, so that the slowdown should be seen as an opportunity to continue work with basic infrastructure development, including water supply systems.
Okay, thank you. I see there's a question from David now.
Mark, at the same time, we didn't look at some of the water issues that have been associated with fracking, like, recycling, because, wherever we read, what we found was that it's not recyclable under current technologies. So that could be one thing that future studies, and I know Bob's planning some too, that could look at is basically how much of that water is being removed from the water cycle, and what sort of other options we might have.
Yes, thank you. That was a related that was a related question I have, so I'm glad that you answered it, Felix.
Okay, I'm going to try to address David Kay's question about trust funds. Um, and it's difficult to go into specifics, but I'll give background information. The voters in North Dakota are very conservative, not just socially conservative, but they're fiscally conservative and they're cheap. Okay, they really pride themselves on not spending a lot of money. Therefore, they've really developed mechanisms to take state funds from oil extraction tax and oil production taxes toward different accounts. They have capped the amount of oil funding that can go into the state's general revenue account. So the annual account for spending by the state, well, we've capped the amount of money that the state can grab from oil extraction taxes. Um, some of the oil extraction taxes go toward funds for the local areas. Some of it goes for school funding. Some of it goes for what we call the Resources Trust Fund, which 50% of that is for water projects. Some of these water projects are projects that we talked about in western North Dakota. Some of them are flood control projects in eastern North Dakota. Um, some of it is projects, once again, Devil's Lake, which has seen a lot of flooding, etc. It's distributed across the state with possibly some effort to bring some support toward Western North Dakota, although there is a fund which is dedicated to our just the oil producing counties. A lot of roads are constructed by that fund. So there's a lot of funding going there, and North Dakota has put, well, in 2013, 2014, there was a lot of money going into a generalized legacy fund, which we were not allowed to tap. I think we're allowed to tap it in 2017, 18, or 19, which is funding that we can use for other things. But in general, there's a specific mechanism that we can get from uh, the North Dakota Treasury Department on all of these allocations, but there's a lot of it, and that's the way we tend to handle it. It's been very good in terms of water projects. I hope I answered your question. Now, through boom bust cycles, the object of these funds is to level out revenue expenditure through boom bust. So we are not spending a lot of money during booms, and we have a lot of money coming in, and that we have a much larger rainy day fund than, let's say, we've noted in Oklahoma and Alaska, where bust times have brought about real revenue problems that North Dakota hasn't had. A lot of North Dakota problems, frankly, are not so much low oil prices, but they're low agricultural prices. Commodity prices are down, and that's probably hurting us more than oil prices being down. Uh,
If I might just interject, there's another question by David regarding wastewater disposal. However, some people may need to exit the webinar, and so you may note that we've put the evaluation form out. So we really appreciate your feedback. So while Robert, you and Felix answer David's other question, I just wanted to give people a chance to fill out the evaluation and leave if they need to move on with their other duties.
um, Frankly, David, there are a number of state permitted wastewater disposal wells. These are deep wells. Some of them are abandoned oil production wells. Um, there are efforts to line the wells through the first 1,000 meters or 10,000 meters of depth, so that there is no problem of transferring very toxic wastewater to groundwater sources. Issues more on is that there is a lot of truck transport of this wastewater, and where you have this wastewater being transported, you're going to have spills. And there's been spills from trucks. There's been trucks spilling water in the middle of the night. We've had wastewater disposal pipelines leak. So it's not so much an issue of bad disposal wells, it's a lot of spills going through the system. Um, I did a piece of research looking at the potential of recycling. From what I understand, the quality of the wastewater in fracking flowback water in western North Dakota is so bad, so saline, that desalination technologies would be very difficult. But because of these transportation costs, there is a lot of incentive to develop a system that might work. Now, in the Marcellus Shale, most of the fracking flowback water becomes recycled. Some of it returns to surface water. A lot of it is returned to the system of fracking other wells. Uh, the quality of the wastewater um, is so bad here that it's very difficult to recycle it to a sufficient quality so that it can be used to frack other wells. So there are environmental concerns. Um, the realized environmental concerns have to do with spills.
Well, this is Mark. I don't see any additional questions, and we've kind of, I think, coming close to the end of our time here. So I think maybe what we'll do is go ahead and formally end the webinar. I just want to thank Bob and Felix for putting this together and sharing this great information. I really appreciate it, and thanks to the participants.
Okay, you're very welcome. I'm glad to. Please contact us if you have more questions. And David, okay. Um, David, please contact me with more questions.
All right.